Hello, students. We're going to dive into the world of CSS frameworks, including Bootstrap. Your learning objectives are identify popular CSS frameworks, describe purpose and contents of CSS frameworks, model various layout options in Bootstrap, begin to modify Bootstrap starter template, model content options in Bootstrap, and model component and utility options in Bootstrap. Let's get started.
Let's talk about CSS frameworks, starting with Bootstrap. So now that you've gone through a semester of HTML and CSS, you can consider the heavy lifting to be done. What's left to do is practice. Now that you have some HTML and CSS skills, you can apply these skills to a framework. Now, what is a framework? Well, Bootstrap is an example of a CSS framework. A CSS framework is pre-written CSS layout and components to quickly build websites. There's a few examples of these websites built with a CSS framework. Bootstrap is used to build Instacart, Vogue, Laughing Cow Cheese. So how does it work? You pick classes from Bootstrap's already written CSS classes to make layouts and components for your content, similar to making a build-your-own entree in a restaurant. Put some things together and then you get a nice meal. So an example, so just adding the class container to your div, you can get a responsive fixed width container just like that. Or if you pick container-fluid, then you get a responsive full width container. So this is container fluid, this is container. The code they give you in Bootstrap is already responsive, so they've already figured out the breakpoints. You don't have to figure this out yourself for most devices and website contents. They're already written code here. So let's talk about layout. Bootstrap works on a grid system, a series of containers and rows and columns to lay out and align your content. Bootstrap uses Flexbox, which is a CSS system that distributes space among items inside a container in a simple, organized manner. You're not required to build a Flexbox here. They've already written it out for you, but say in the advanced course, you probably will see Flexbox in that course. A flex container expands items to fill the available space or shrinks them to prevent overflow. So here's an example of one. Using class column small 3 times, we can create 3 evenly spaced columns. So using 3 of these, we'll get this. The end result is flexible and responsive to changing browser widths. So let's see it in action. So we go to the Bootstrap website, getbootstrap.com. We'll download the compiled CSS and JavaScript, and then we'll get the starter template, and you can follow along from there. So let's go to Bootstrap. So here's the Bootstrap homepage. Currently they're at version 4.4.1. So what you want to do is go to the download first. So either here or up here. Either way, you want to download their CSS and JavaScript first. So if you go down, scroll down a little bit to compiled CSS and JavaScript, that's what you want. So download the file here. And then once you have that, let's open it up. So here you go. Just unzip it here. And then now you have a folder with CSS in it and JavaScript. So let's go back to the Bootstrap page. And then from here, you want to go to the introduction link here. So what we want to do next is scroll down a little bit and then we want to get the starter template. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see this section of code here. And then what we want to do is copy this, and then we're going to paste this into a new HTML file, and then connect that to, put that in our folder with the other stuff. So if we go back to, let's go to Atom. Here's Atom, trusty Atom. Make a new file. I can start a new file here, either here or if you have one already. And then what you want to do is paste your code here. And then you want to save it into the folder that you just downloaded. So save. You want to save it in your Bootstrap folder that you just downloaded, in with the CSS and JavaScript here. Save as. Find the folder that had our Bootstrap that we just downloaded. Call this index. And now you should have a functional Bootstrap page. Let's open it up. It'll only say hello world on it, but we can show it to you anyway. Here's your hello world. Let's go back to the presentation. So going back to that thing we just showed you, here is a class row which contains these 3 columns from before. So important note about using multiple CSS classes. Bootstrap, if you use Bootstrap extensively, you will wind up using multiple CSS classes. So to be more efficient, instead of writing a class each time for each different class, you can combine them using class equals stuff and things separated by a space, little social distance here. We may have talked about this in class already, but this is a good reminder. So combine your CSS classes here. Another thing to point out about the Bootstrap grid system is that the number 12 is very important. 12 columns is how Bootstrap grids are divided. So you can divvy up things in Bootstrap quite easily using the factors of 12. So here, this top one is, say, 6 and 6 equals 12. The bottom one here, 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 12. You can do 3, 6, and 3, or 5 in the middle, and then 3.5 on both sides equals 12. You can do even more wacky things depending on your needs. You can make this variable and then these fixed. You can make this variable and make this longer and this one shorter. You can have columns in Bootstrap and they can span multiple rows. The takeaway is you can use a number. In this case, you can do 8 and 4 to make 12. Or you can just use the word column, or at least here is COL, and let the browser space them out. You can even do column small and then a number. So here, column small and then a number, to start them out stacked in mobile. So this is like a mobile screen. Or just column small here. And then when you get to a bigger screen, they spread out nicely. So here's 8, column small 8, column small 4, and then 3 column smalls here, evenly distributed. You can mix and match them to get different layouts. So here in a configuration of 8 and 4 to start out, or here 4, 4, and 4, or 6 and 6, and then on bigger sizes it'll go 12 and then 6, or 6 and 6 and 6 here, or 6 and 6 here. So you can really mix and match this effect. You can vertically align them. So using align item start, they can start at the top here. Align item center, they move to the middle here. Line it at the end, they stick to the bottom here. Vertical alignment, you can even make like stairs. Align self start here, align self center here, and align self end here. You can do all sorts of wacky horizontal alignments using justified content and some thing here. You can nest rows or columns inside of other rows. There's all kinds of layouts you can do that you can explore on your own. Let's talk about project 3. This is your last final project to make a portfolio site for yourself. There's no set number of projects required for this, but 2 or 3 school or freelance projects will be fine. You can feel free to use this example site for your final project. Make things easier for yourself. And now extra credit. Originally, you were supposed to link your project 2 and your project 3 sites together, but considering what's going on, I'm making this extra credit. So what does this entail? 1, making a link of some kind between your project 2 site and your project 3 site using ahref. It could be a link in your main nav of your project 3 site, a link back to project 2, or you can include your project 2 site as one of your 2 or 3 school or freelance projects. Welcome to part 2 of Bootstrap. Now we're going to talk about content. And since we already talked layout, we can take some pieces of Bootstrap and build a website. You can find the components on the left of the main Bootstrap page. Let's go over here. Here. So here are some examples of useful components for your portfolio website. A carousel, so this is for displaying a series of images. The collapse component, you can make accordions or similar content holders. Or you can use a button to show and hide content. So if you click this button, then you have this stuff that shows up here. You can make drop downs and drop down toggles with menus underneath. You can make a split button. So you click here and then this is the drop down. It splits down right here. You can make forms with many options. You can make a jumbotron. This is a simple hero unit for calling extra attention to featured content, often associated with a hero image, often at the top of your home page. So you can use this jumbotron. You can make lists in Bootstrap that look really nice. You can make navigation. So this is a simple version with many options. You make a nav bar with extra subcomponents like drop downs here and a search bar. You can make popovers. These are little windows that pop over when you click on a button. Scroll spy is a fancy component that spies or tracks on where the page is scrolled and then highlights the appropriate link with an active class. So this is the active class here. And as you scroll down, then this will light up, or this will become with a blue background, and so on. You can do tooltips, so similar to popovers, but with mouse overs. You can mouse over and then you get extra little information here. Welcome to part 3 of Bootstrap. Let's talk about utilities. Now that we've done the starter template and some layout and some components, we can talk about extra things we can do with our Bootstrap site. You can find utilities underneath components in the left menu on the Bootstrap site. So down here, here are the utilities. So what are they and why do we need them? we use them to add classes to our HTML to get pre-written styles. These are CSS features that normally we would have to add ourselves, but with Bootstrap, you can already use theirs. Borders, there's one example of them. You can quickly style a border and border radius of an element, so they're great for images or buttons or something like that. We can embed without using iframes, so we can do YouTube in Bootstrap. You can add or remove shadows to elements using box shadow. We have a lot of options for controlling how text looks. You can justify text. We can vertically align, so we can change the baseline of our text. We can add borders to our divs itself. So same thing, border utilities. So we can add class border or border and then some direction to add custom borders. So class border gives you a border all the way around. Border top just gives you the top. You can also subtract borders. So here's border -0. Here's border top -0. No border here. You can add colors from Bootstrap standard themes. So primary, secondary, then there's success, danger, there's warning, info, light and dark, and white. So primary is the blue here, secondary is this dark color gray here, and then success is the green color. You can round off our corners using rounded, or rounded in a direction, or rounded circle, or rounded 0. Here's a result of this. We can embed using utilities with an iframe or with the embed tag or with video. So we start with class embed responsive on the div that the iframe is in, and then we can add embed responsive 16:9 for a 16:9 aspect ratio here. Get this. And this styles the iframe for us as long as we enclose the iframe inside of a separate div. We can add shadows again. So all we need to do is add a shadow class, or not, shadow none, this is default, or small, or some other attributes as listed here. So no shadow, small shadow, regular shadow, larger shadow. So here's the results. We have many options for controlling how text looks. So text left, text center, text right. So text -left, center, or right, depending on your needs. You can be specific to this viewport size, so anything view small, you can left align. Using text small left or text medium left. So for medium, large, and extra large viewports. We can transform text. So text lowercase will lowercase this. Text uppercase will uppercase text everything. Capitalized text will capitalize this lowercase t over here. To get this, notice again, text capitalized only does the first letter, so it's already capitalized here, it's fine, but it will capitalize this T here, like so. You can do font weights using font weight bold, normal, or light, or font italic. To get this, there are other results. like text wrapping and monospacing that you can do. And you can do word breaks. Let's go back to content for a moment. We can make responsive images through the magic of Bootstrap. To make an image responsive, add img-fluid to the img tag. We can see this in action on the Bootstrap site. If we go back to Bootstrap site under content, under images, we can see responsive images here. If you want to read about more IMG Fluid, check out images over here. More information here. One more thing. Also on the left, you can do typography here. You can do small and faded kind of treatments using text muted. You make big display text, even bigger than H1s, using display 1, 2, 3, and 4 for big display headings. There's plenty of other options for lists and block quotes if you go back into your documentation of Bootstrap. So for your final project, you'll need to have the starter template. Remember, this was over here under Getting Started. Here's your starter template. So copy this and make sure it's into your Bootstrap site. Either you download or link to the CSS and JavaScript. Now, if you use the starter template, it's already done for you. Make sure you do that. In your layout, you must use class container or fluid and a class row and some kind of column class. You have to have at least 2 fluid images. And you have to use at least 5 components and/or utility. I'll show you how to use components and utilities in an example site. So if you do that, then you'll meet the requirements for the final project. So let's do some. Go back to Bootstrap. Got our starter template. Let's go to Add-on. So here's our starter template. So I'll break down how to make this site, but we've got a nav bar here, Jumbotron here, we've got cards here, and then here I wrote a HTML footer, but I'll show you some utilities that you can use here to make some space and style this up a little bit.